Okay. Thank you. That'll work. Okay, are we streaming, Brent? Oh, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Oops, I don't even have the last page. Okay, any questions so far about the last bit? Probably a lot of questions. Those are really just tools for you to play with. We don't consider them backbone tools. You know, they're just, there's so many things. We're just trying to introduce you to a few and give you a couple of looks at them. Sometimes people don't even know where to go look. So, all right, it is 2:15. This is the last leg. Go team. Stay with me just one more section. We wanted to add something at the end here to help you kind of bring this all together, to get your arms around, okay, so how do you put all this together and go forward and actually do something? So we decided to do a little exercise here. And this has to do with your communication strategy, with the strategy you have for using all of these tools. A social media strategy is more than having a Facebook page. When I ask people, you know, do you have a social media strategy, and they say to me, well, I have a Facebook page. Like, a Facebook page is not a communication strategy. I mean, I'm glad you have one, but that isn't what a strategy is about. The idea of how to use these tools in a collaborative fashion to accomplish a goal is more than just knowing how to use the tools. Does that make sense? Or tweeting now and then. Honestly, it's a tool, and it's not always the right tool, any more than the public meeting is always the tool, or a trap line is always the right tool, or a press release is always the right tool. These are tools in the toolbox. You use the tools that are appropriate and that work for you. And I want to say this because I get this pushback from people who are very anti-social media. Well, it's still, don't forget, you still have to talk to people. I'm not suggesting that we replace trap lines and public meetings and talking to people face to face. That's always the number one thing you should do, especially in a crisis. People need to touch you, hear you, talk to you, know that you care. All those things remain important. You will never stop doing those things. These are ways to supplement. And honestly, if my choice to reach a much larger audience is send a press release or engage in social media, I pick social media because at least they can talk back to me. They can send me pictures of their dog. We can have a conversation. At least we can have it virtually. Even if I can't see everyone in person. So, to me, it isn't the best way, but it's the next best way. If I can't touch every person in that community personally, if I can't get to everyone one at a time, one-on-one, this is better than just go to my press release. My opinion. So, I think that when we talk about using it strategically, here's what's important to me. And I want to tell you that everything we've told you here is what we think. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make what you should do. It is what we know how to do. It's what's worked effectively for us. You are free to say, that's stupid, I would never do that, and go do something else. Whatever you'd like to do. Or you can build your own strategy, take your own approach, use your own tools. But what I believe is that you have to have an integrated strategy. Integrated means it's not isolated. You don't just do Twitter and nothing else. You don't just write a press release and nothing else. You need to have, as you look here, information released via traditional means by PIOs at the briefing is repeated into your Twitter account, is repeated onto other pages. The idea is you integrate and you take that messages and information throughout everything that you're doing. And this is my little rant, but I believe that your communication, your social media strategy and efforts should be directly tiered to your overall communication strategy. If your communication strategy says, we will provide timely and accurate information to the public, excellent. How? Am I going to write a press release? Am I going to put it on paper airplanes? Drop it from a helicopter? I don't know. How are you going to do that? And on social media, how? What does that mean? If we're going to say social media is going to be used to support traditional public information releases, how? How often? When? Where? So I have lines in my strategy of this is our communication strategy objective. This is how in my social media strategy says here's a communication strategy objective. Here's how we're going to use social media to meet that objective. A social media strategy doesn't exist in a vacuum and operate independent of everything else. It's only there to support your larger communication goals and objectives. So if you're going to say social media is used to monitor, respond, and engage within the community in real time, how? What real-time tool are you using? How are you going to get the information to that real-time tool? How? So I'm encouraging you to think really through this in great detail. Give yourself the hows when you're going to write something like this. Now, admittedly, not everyone has a written communication strategy. Not everyone has a written social media strategy. But I would suggest that you at least have a common strategy in your head. Sometimes mine never gets on paper either if I'm busy, but I have it in here. I know what it is I'm trying to. The question is, if you don't write it down for someone to read that's working for you, how are you going to communicate what you want them to do and how you want them to get there? So we're going to do a couple of things. In the social media, the SMEM folder online, I have included, for the online audience, for people in this room, we have printed these off for you. For the online audience, there is a scenario, which we're going to be using here in a minute. And there is also a, just as an example, it's called the NEMO 2014 strategy or something like that, but it starts with the word NEMO. And all that is and I'm still working on it. You'll see it's in draft form. There's a whole bunch at the bottom that's not done, but I actually had worked on it and finished it, and then I didn't save it. so then I lost it. This is what it looks like. It's a total draft of stuff, but you'll see if you look at this, the top one where we say provide accurate and timely content. Okay, the how. We're going to vet the information that's operational in nature, specific to tactical action, or specific regarding completed tactical tasks with a designated ops person. We're saying there is certain information we're going to vet before we put it out. Non-operational information will be vetted by the lead PI. We'll gather and post information hourly or whenever that's possible or reasonable. That's how we're going to provide timely and accurate information. It's specific. We will establish at each incident an appropriate method for collection of this information. We will use GroupMe to keep our people. We will put QR codes on trap lines. This is how my social media is going to support my very specific communications strategic objective. Any questions about that? Do you understand what I'm getting at? It's not just, we're going to have a Facebook page. Great. What objective are you meeting with that? How are you going to use it? And I'm not saying this is perfect. I had to sort of work on it now to try to get part of it done so I could at least try to give you written idea of what it was I was talking about. So don't feel like this is anything you have to use. I'm just trying to give you something to get you started thinking about what I mean. And I'll be finishing editing this later. There's a bunch of it at the end that's not even done yet. I just have questions in there that I need to ask. How do we measure? How are we going to encourage people to experiment with those things and build that into meeting our objectives? Anyway, so I'm going to deal with the end of it. But it's there for the online audience if you want to print it off and use it as a guide. Or if you download it, you can edit once you've downloaded it. I have it in here where you can't edit it because if I let you edit in here, you're editing mine. I'd rather edit mine. So let's see. And there's also the scenario, because after I read the scenario to you, you're going to probably want to refer to it. So what we're going to do during this exercise, and I'll do this while we're sitting in here, why don't you guys start over here and count in threes?
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Okay, those are your groups. If you're in group 1, you'll meet somewhere. Group 2, you meet somewhere. Group 3. What I want you to do, I'm going to read the scenario, and I made this a prevention scenario because we have a lot of prevention people around, and a lot of PIOs that work on fires also sometimes work on prevention teams. They understand prevention. But if you don't want to use that as a scenario, build something different. But the idea here is, once I read this, is that you should assume that you're going to use all your standard outreach and tools and whatever they are, press releases, agency, PSAs, and then build a social media campaign for this time period using the tools and techniques you learned here in class. Tie it to your current outreach, to the things you normally would do anyway, where possible, but feel free to add any new efforts, like maybe you decide you're going to call a tweet up for something. If you want to call something new to support it, you're welcome to do that too. It's okay to just put down ideas for things you want to do in relation to this exercise, but I want you to tier it to something. What standard communication strategy are you trying? And you can use your own agency as an example for what is a strategy or an objective for you. Are there any questions before I read this? And then when we're done, here's what we're going to do. You have like an hour and a half to work on this, to drag a table over to a corner, do what you want. People at home, you can work on one alone. You can write up you could use an incident that you had this summer and use that as an example. We're just looking for some ideas. People online, what I want you to do, I would prefer, if you would, that you actually work in Google Drive. There is a folder inside Google Drive, the SMEM folder that we've been working in, that's called, what do we call it? Final Presentations. That's been open to you. If you go ahead and go in there and you say create a new document where it says new on the other side, you just create a new Google Doc and you can start typing in there. That way, once you're done, and we won't peek or look at it unless you want us to, we'll go see if you've created anything. And and so then we can share here in class and you can watch as we talk about it. At the end of this, at what time? At 4 o'clock Eastern. We're all going to come back here, we'll go online, and I'm going to have each group present its strategy. Our groups in here will present up front. The groups online will read through their strategy online, or figure out some other way to get.
Groups in here, if you would like to have anything to be shared on the screen, we'll go ahead and make sure that is dragged into the same presentation folder.
If you want to build something in Drive instead of using the boards, that's fine, and then we'll throw it in here, and you don't have to stand up front. Somebody will have to come up and guide us through what you were doing. But we have about an hour then to talk about what your strategy was. The idea is, you may think of something that nobody else thought of, and they'll go, oh, that's a really good idea, and then maybe you go back and do it. Okay, are there questions before I read this? Any questions online? Of course, they're 20 seconds behind, so I'll wait for a minute.
A note for people who are online, I can see this happening already. Make sure you edit your presentation, not my presentation or somebody else's presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this document that's up at the moment. I want you to create your own, so everybody should have, unless you're collaborating with somebody, you should have your own document up. Does that make sense?
Look at all the people that are in this document already.
There's 3 of us. Yay!
Yeah, each group online, create your own new document. You can work virtually with someone else who's on, talk to them in Skype, say you can work together on a strategy if you'd like to do that. Tom, get out of the document.
Write it all myself. I have no control.
Okay, I hope everybody's understanding what we're saying. We promise not to peek. Nathan will watch from in here and help the virtual audience with that sort of thing. Create your own strategy, save it in your own, not your own folder, well, in the folder, right? So you open the folder, then you say new, and you create a document, and then you give it a title for whoever strategy it is. Hope this is clear. Okay, so here's your scenario. You don't have to write this down because we've printed these out for you, but just sort of listen to what it is. And this is local to you. In Maine, the winters are long. Spring is always eagerly anticipated, and this is true again this year, and everyone is looking forward to the return of nice weather. And although there's been continuous rain and snow through now, the sun is forecasted to come out, make temperatures soar, and April should be glorious. But the weather patterns are predicted to be odd again this year. Through September, Maine, and particularly Acadia National Park on Mount Desert Island, are likely to receive only 50% of normal rainfall. Vegetation is projected to become bone dry as summer tourists and residents begin to return in the spring. Water supplies are likely to dwindle in the heat. Still, most people aren't worried. They think rain will come eventually toward fall, even if the forecasters say no, that it's likely Mount Desert Island will experience the driest conditions ever recorded. The stage is being set for a disastrous fire season similar to the Great Fire of 1947, which raged through 17,000 acres of the island with a devastating appetite for homes and historic estates and withstand replacing intensity. You and your fellow prevention specialists and your boss are concerned due to the forecasted conditions and the fact that people are so complacent due to the wet winter so far and the fact that fires are not common on the island. Your boss has asked that you focus your spring work on a full prevention campaign in the area. There is primary interest in the northeast end of the island near Hulls Cove, Salisbury's Cove, Town Hill, and Bar Harbor, and especially the nearby mainland and Trenton, which, if involved, could prevent people from evacuating the island in the event of a wildfire. Historic estates and inns, such as those on Millionaires Row and Bar Harbor, and popular destinations in and around Acadia National Park, should be an important part of your strategy. Keep in mind that tourists from around the world visit the island through the summer via many cruise ships. Okay? So what we want is your prevention team is going to, in this area, build a campaign to take to that part of the island. What could you do? Think about what your communication objectives normally would be. Build yourself, using the social media tools and ideas that you've learned, build yourself some kind of a strategy. What could you do to engage people? What could you do to communicate? What could you do to get them less complacent about what's going on and to pay attention and to take action to prepare? Okay? So I would say starting now, and then for the online people, we will stop the stream while we work. You continue to work on whatever you choose to, or not. Come back at 4 o'clock Eastern time if you'd like to, and we'll be presenting whatever we find in the folders or whatever we have here in the room. Okay? So feel free to take your board and pens to another part anywhere you want in the room. Work wherever you'd like to. Let's just say, well, 1s, 2s, 3s as a place just to start to gather and decide what you're going to do.
And for our online audience, per the standard, if you have any questions during this time, please email those to nemoteams@gmail.com. Use the comment stream on Ustream and or use the hashtag on Twitter, SMEMtraining15.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll give these. Nathan says, here's that, your group 1. This is just your stuff for group 2. And Tom, are you 3? Okay, so each group has
You don't have all the me.
one.
Put spaces in it though.
Now come on.
Ones are over here.
Your lead